let's introduce our guests who are joining, because politics always begins whether it is midnight or whatever time of the day or night it is. And Anand Ranganathan, thank you for joining us tonight. It's a long but a very exciting night ahead of us. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, how do you see the predictable politics that's already begun on what the Prime Minister said and how the Congress has responded?
Good evening, or should I say good morning, Madhav and Navika. No, I think it's going absolutely along predictable lines, including the fact that this so-called toolkit lobby has even roped President Obama to peddle the kind of perverse lies that he never apologized for when he first spoke them in 2015. But as I said, the problem is that none of these lies have been comprehensively rebutted in the last 8 years, so they keep resurfacing. So you need someone of the caliber and strength and importance of one of the frontline ministers, because I'm sure Prime Minister Modi should not do it or will not do it. I don't know what the the diplomacy dictates. But someone like Dr. Jaishankar or Mr. Puri or some other people, they have to rebut this once and for all with all the data, and the data is absolutely clear that far from discriminating against the minorities, it is the Hindus that have been discriminated against. Matlab yahan ulti ganga beh rahi hai. And no other Prime Minister in living memory, Navika, I have the data with me, has done more for Muslims than Narendra Modi. From scholarships to housing to all sorts of things, for even Pradhan Mantri Shadi Shagun scheme. So, this kind of blatant lies that have been peddled, it's all very well, you can say, if they peddle it day and night, which they do in India. But to do it and rope in ex-presidents and to do it so blatantly abroad, when the Prime Minister is there, when important discussions are happening, when America needs us for its business and other means.
Dr. Anand Ranganathan, it's coming thick and fast. Now, B.V. Srinivas of the Congress party also tweeting, "Muh mein Ram, bagal mein churi." And let me welcome Kamruzaman Chaudhary, Congress leader, also joining this broadcast. And with me in the studios is also Shehzad Poonawalla, BJP's national spokesperson, joining me on this broadcast. And what would you say? What would you say about Pawan Khera's tweet, B.V. Srinivas, who have wasted no time, Shehzad Poonawalla? They're really working hard, beyond midnight to keep pace with the Prime Minister.
I can only pity the mediocrity of their propaganda, which once again has resorted to their old stale toolkit. The fact of the matter is that even President Joe Biden shut down this entire narrative that democracy is dead by saying pretty much that America-China and America-India relations can't be put in the same bracket simply because the DNA of both America and India contains democracy. And the fact of the matter is that democracy isn't a gift to us from the Western world. The fact is that this democracy has come to us even before the advent of the Constitution. For 5,000 years, this country has in its civilizational text democracy ingrained in it, whether it's the Anubhav Mandapam of Baswanna or whether it is the Upanishads, whether it is the Vedas. So we don't need no lectures about democracy from anybody else. But yes, having said that, today when we give 800 million food grains to rations to people, there's no discrimination done between Madhav and Matthew and Mary and Mohit and Muhammad. The fact of the matter is when 12 crore toilets are built, 11 crore houses get Nal Se Jal, when it's 3.5 crore people who get households or avasas under the PM Awas Yojana, a majority of the beneficiaries are from the OBC, ST, SC and the women community. The fact of the matter is that the first time a president has come from the Adivasi Samaj, a female president from the Adivasi Samaj, which the Congress party never dared to give. The fact of the matter is that today the Prime Minister's government can boast of a track record that there is absolutely no institutional discrimination between any community. But the problem with the Congress party is that all they have left is a few statements that they can pick up and run with an agenda at a time when the entire nation is being celebrated by America, by the world. This is the Congress party which has resorted back to a mediocre propaganda.
Let me get in Kamruzaman Chaudhary. Also joining the broadcast at this point is Nikhil Jain, political analyst, follows the Congress party very closely. But let me also introduce the visuals that are coming in from the United States Congress, where the Prime Minister is likely to reach in just about 58 minutes from now. So we'll keep bringing you all the updates from there. But Kamruzaman Chaudhary, the Congress extremely active. You found a line that you can latch on to. How do you respond to the reply given by the Prime Minister, who said, where is the differentiation that is made on caste, creed, gender or religion, and that India needs no lessons on democracy? How would you respond to that?
नाविका, फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट हिंदी में एक कहावत है, जो दिखता है वो बिकता है. India, whatever is happening in India, people abroad, in America, in other countries, they're watching it. They're responding to what they're watching. It's not that you.
Oh, जो दिखता है वो बिकता है. From मोहब्बत की दुकान to जो दिखता है वो बिकता है. आप तो सेल्समैन हो गए हैं, कमरुज़मान चौधरी.
Navika, will you please let me respond? You have given uninterrupted time to these people from the Bharatiya Janata Party and the ecosystem. So give me at midnight. At midnight, we are coming. India got freedom in midnight, and today we are discussing midnight democracy in midnight. At last, after 9 years, our great Prime Minister had to come and say कि हमारा यहाँ पे गणतंत्र है, democracy है. This was the tone. I'm ashamed. The Prime Minister has to assert himself in United States that democracy is here in India. Where do you think the democracy is? When all the institutions of India have been compromised. The latest example being the delimitation exercise in Assam, where intentionally the Assam government hobnobbed with the Election Commission to divide the constituencies which they seem where Muslim majority seats. This was the Bengali-dominated Barak Valley was stripped of two assembly seats. Do you think this is how the democracy functions?
Mr. Kamruzaman Chaudhary, I have a question for you, sir. Sir, is it not a fact that Assam is a state where for 40 years there's been no delimitation? Perhaps the only state in India. Even Jammu Kashmir, there was delimitation in the 90s. Assam, it's happening 40 years too late is what the Election Commission is saying. And it has been constitutionally mandated to do this.
Wait. Last time the delimitation was held in 1976. We had a violent uprising in Assam. 1985 we entered into an Assam Accord. For that reason the delimitation was not done. But now...
So it should never be done according to you.
But democracy was alive then, and democracy is having problems today, Kamruzaman Chaudhary. Well, it's coming thick and fast. Udit Raj of the Congress party says, very awkward question posed to the Prime Minister by a US journalist as regard to the discrimination against minorities in India. He tried to cover up, but no straight answer. It was quite embarrassing. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, was it embarrassing or was it emphatic?
Let me elaborate on that. I think because my brother Shehzad is there, I would have dearly loved Shehzad to be not in your studio, Navika, but in the White House. Because let's be very honest, even though, as I already said, Narendra Modi, Mr. Modi said what were his limitations, I don't know. But the fact is, just to reiterate again and again that India is and has been a democracy is one thing. To rebut this illogical, specious lies and propaganda with data is another. For example, we all know that North Korea is a brutal dictatorship. But what is it officially called? Democratic People's Republic of Korea. So they will say we are a democracy. Nobody believes them. So it's all very well for someone to say that yes, we are a democracy, but you have to give facts. And the facts are there. Shehzad has said it, I have said it. The fact is, ulti ganga beh rahi hai. No other Prime Minister has done more for minorities than Narendra Modi. And no other state other than the non-BJP ruled state, the Muslims are being actively discriminated against. You look at the data of the state of Muslims in Gujarat. Compare them to Muslims in Bengal. My God, it's like Muslims in Bengal are like Muslims in Pakistan. They are so much worse off. So unless you give data, you can keep harping that no, we are great, but people won't believe you. You give data and slam dunk.
Well, Nikhil Jain, I'm coming to you. Nikhil Jain, the Prime Minister has responded and very emphatically, and as Anand Ranganathan says, point one of the schemes where there has been discrimination. Why would you carry on with the song and dance about minorities being suppressed when day after day, they're present on all national channels, raising their voice, expressing their concerns? The fact is that there is a difference between a victim and the victim card being played, don't you think? I think you're on mute. Maybe you can unmute yourself. You have freedom of speech. You have freedom of speech. That muting was done by you yourself, not by anybody in this democracy. Carry on.
Of course. So, Navika, the government cannot do anything against the Muslims directly. What happens at hand here is that the ruling party, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's ruling party, the BJP, its members, its leaders, its MLAs, its MPs are the ones raising slogans against Muslims. The Prime Minister continually engages in dog whistling against the Muslims. And that is the problem that we're facing right now. Nobody is saying that the government of India is discriminating against Muslims. The problem is with the BJP, the Prime Minister Modi, his leadership, and his own leaders. Look at that Telangana MLA of BJP, A. Raja. He's telling Hindus to take arms against the Muslims. Is that the kind of society that we want to live in? Nobody has a problem with the government schemes not reaching to Muslims. And frankly, that is not something Narendra Modi could do even if he wanted to. You have the courts in this country, they're still functioning. You cannot make a scheme only for Hindus or only for Sikhs or only for Jains. You'll have to make them for everybody. And he's not lacking on that part. It is the political messaging, the dog whistling, that is the problem.
The political messaging,
about,
you think, okay, the political messaging about democracy being dead should be accepted without a question.
We have had a Prime Minister who got up and said that the first right of resources belong to one particular community in that country when there's no institutional discrimination between minorities and majority. That is a big deal. The fact of the matter is that all big riots against Muslims, be it the Mumbai riots, Jalgaon, Ahmedabad, Delhi, all of these riots took place under the Congress's watch. Mr. Jain, I did not interrupt you. I can shut you down with the voice also and with facts also. I would appreciate if at 12:30 in the night we can have a civilized discussion. Obviously, you're from the Congress party, so it's difficult to have fun with you. But I would appreciate if you could wait your turn. And I'm a minority in between the two of us, so let me have my say. Mr. Jain, can I have my say, Navika?
Make your point.
Thank you.
Make your point.
Now, Mr. Jain, just for your refreshing your memory, when the Prime Minister of this country gets up and says, "Bada ped girta hai, dharti hilti hai," is that dog whistling or is that pretty much justifying the worst genocide that this country has seen in 1984? When for 34 years you defend Sajjan Kumar, you do not allow prosecution to take place. When you allow Jagdish Titler to get promoted within your party, when you allow the murderers of the Mumbai riots to come into an alliance with you, when you ally with the ISF in Bengal and when you ally with the Muslim League in Kerala, what kind of secularism are you preaching? Stop giving out your certificates of secularism. Stop giving out your certificates because you are the worst perpetrators of violence against minorities.
All right, Shehzad Poonawala, midnight, 12:30. We don't have to lose our cool. We will debate this without losing our cool. But Nikhil Jain, no, I'm asking Nikhil Jain. He talked about Raja Singh of Telangana. So let me tell you, the BJP suspended him for his remarks against the Prophet. Now, that is not something you ever remember to quote. And I want to ask you, is that deliberate? And is the dog whistling that you keep doing not take facts into account when you say that and you take it for granted? My friend Nikhil Jain, why don't you tell the world that in this country, after the JAM actually happened and Aadhaar and the digital payment systems and DBTs actually were put to use, the fact is that the 15 paisa that used to reach people has become 100 paisa that reaches people. How come you people forget to give those details and only keep crying about how the minorities are a victim in this country?
Navika, I think to make that comparison is akin to me saying, why did Times Now not talk about when India got independent? Times Now did not exist at that time. Google Pay, internet transfers, internet banking, smartphones in the hand of normal people, those are things that have come into existence only in the past few years. How do you expect a leakage-free government transfer system back in the 80s? Rajiv Gandhi was honest enough to the people of the country to tell them...
What is he saying?
No. I'm also introducing on the panel Sushant Sareen, senior fellow at the ORF. Also joining me is Tushar Gupta, deputy editor of the Swaraj magazine. And I want to ask you, Sushant Sareen, have we, is it the comparison between Times Now? Why did it not talk about independence when we talk about the leakages and the manner in which, minorities. In fact, everybody is being looked after, especially those who needed help, any strata of the society.
Navika, look, Mr. Jain, I've not heard I just heard the snatches of what Anand was saying. But I think Mr. Jain, keeps talking about, he'll quote a random guy from the BJP and then try and make it out to sound that this is what the whole party is about. Then, well, let me ask him about somebody like an Imran Masood or one of that Pratapgarhi fellow, which they have, or a range of other characters, out in the Congress party. Does that mean that that is what the Congress party stands for? And in terms of violence, I think Shehzad has done a good job, but I could go on and start pointing out riot after riot which took place under the Congress party's watch. And some of the worst riots, you forget Bhagalpur, 3,000 people dead. Let's talk about Delhi. Let's talk about, I could go on. Virtually every year, there used to be a pogrom under the foot of the Congress party, and it was still supposedly secular. Incidentally, one second. Why are you becoming so?
Was because of Atal Bihari Vajpayee.
One second, Mr. Kamruddin. 1 second. If you have any problem in what I'm saying on fact,
don't penalize as the Prime Minister is doing.
No, you can question me later. I am answering something which Mr. Jain had raised. Do you have a problem with it?
No, you said Pratapgarhi some fellow. Do you know who is
what is wrong in
Yes, he is your Rajya Sabha member of parliament. And do you know what all he said about Atiq Ahmed? Now, you don't want us to begin to believe that Atiq Ahmed is some paragon of virtue whose praises were sung by Imran Pratapgarhi. You have an objection with him being called some Pratapgarhi. We're giving you an escape route, Sushant Sareen, but Kamruzaman Chaudhary is very proud of his member of parliament, Imran Pratapgarhi, who's actually, in the following of Atiq Ahmed.
May I just pose one question to Mr. Sareen, just 1 second. To all the Ilhan Omar lookalikes on this panel, so Sanjay Raut has said Muslim rights to vote should be revoked. Muslim rights. Now, can I not be interrupted by you, Mr. Chaudhary? Mr. Chaudhary, can I not be interrupted by you?
But let's not.
I did not mention anybody. Why are they taking it personally? Why are they taking it personally? Now, can I, Navika, make a more pertinent point, which I think is necessary to be made? Navika, I request your indulgence to make a point, which will take only 10 seconds.
I would request you,
Mr.
Kamruzaman Chaudhary has been extremely gracious to be present
this is
at
his
this
levels of
late
graciousness.
hour.
I only fear to understand what his levels of non-graciousness
let's make the larger point, not personal points. Yes.
Just 10 seconds and I will stop after that. Just 10 seconds. Sanjay Raut, the only person who I know in living memory, has said Muslims' voting rights should be revoked. Mr. Kamruzaman Chaudhary, the only person you should be having a problem is with Sanjay Raut, whom you are going to be gallivanting with tomorrow morning. Can you please tell me, if you are such a champion of minority rights, the Congress party, you've contested on the Congress ticket, what is your view on Sanjay Raut's statement? Here it is. I've shown this statement on Economic Times to Navika. Now please tell me.
This is not a give and take question. Do you feel for those girls who lost their schools?
Don't change the goalpost. The fundamental voting right of Muslims should be
Which
revoked.
girls are you talking about? Which girls are you
He's
talking
gone to the Jantar Mantar issue.
Then I can also raise many things. Do you know about the rape rate in Rajasthan? What about those girls, Kamruzaman Chaudhary? One happening in Bikaner, one happening every other day in Rajasthan. Can you please look at that number and feel bad for those girls as well? They may not be medal winners, sir, but they need your attention.
Navika, if you want to compare one rape incident with another rape incident, this is very unfair.
My friend, it is not one rape incident versus another.
And you say that Lakshadweep cannot have a particular right, and next day you go and say that Assam cannot have madrasas, and next day you come and say that we cannot have a different type of law in this country. The Uniform Civil Code needs to be brought in. Now, what is this? When the Indian Constitution has given the right of religious freedom to each and every citizen to practice and propagate his own religion, who are these dharam rakshas that are masquerading in India right now in the name of religion? Who are they? Wow.
All right.
who gave
Two
the
hands
proper
going up. Sushant Sareen was rudely interrupted. So him first and then Anand, I'm coming to you. Sushant
So,
Sareen.
Navika, I'm extremely sleepy and under duress. Your channel has got me back on your thing. So I'll just take half a minute and finish it off. Number
Please
one,
don't
you know,
be sleepy.
No, I am very
Have a
sleepy and
cup
I
of
do want to say
coffee
something
or
which
just
you and
smell
me-
the coffee because the big moment is coming anytime soon.
Yes.
So
I'll
just
see
be
it
awake.
tomorrow. But bro, but on a more serious note, look, you know, Mr. Chaudhary is right. You can't you can't justify one rape by talking about another rape. But it is just as unconscionable for people like Mr. Chaudhary to talk about one rape and not talk about another. You know, this selectivism is not proper. Number two, when somebody talks about a uniform civil code, we are not, and certainly I am not, talking about a Hindu civil code. We are talking about a uniform civil code which is based on values which a modern society must espouse. I'm not talking about a religion-specific code. So it's neither a Muslim civil code or a Hindu civil code or a Christian civil code. It's a uniform civil code which has good practices which are applicable to everybody. That does not affect somebody practicing his or her religion. That is completely separate. There is a uniform civil code, for example, in the United States, to Muslims not practice their religion in the United States or Hindus not practice their religion in the United States. So this is an utterly disingenuous argument which people like Mr. Chaudhary are making. The third point that I wanted to make was that, you know, basically we are talking about the Prime Minister's speech and his answer. And my take on it was that, look, as the Prime Minister, as a statesman, that was the answer he probably thought fit to give. But if I had been in his place, and I'm never going to be in his place, but, you know, I, being myself, I would have been combative and I would have turned around and asked that journalist to give me specific instances of discrimination which he's talking about. And I can tell you that she would have had absolutely no data, no empirical evidence, but just this fake narrative which has been created. Now, India is a country of 1.4 billion people. Bad things will happen in a country as big as this, and bad things will happen on a daily basis, right? The same way as they happen in the United States. You take an isolated incident and you portray an entire country, for example, like the United States, as a racist country, as a country where the cops only kill people. They are trigger-happy cops who kill people because of the color of their skin. I can go on and on and on and talk about all the ills of American society, just as somebody would want to talk about the ills of Indian society. That's not the idea.
Right.
If you want to be a drain inspector, you are most welcome to be one.
Well,
but if you are talking about two countries like India and the United States, then there are bigger fish to fry. Unfortunately, the journalist who asked that question was either totally ignorant or was so dumbed down that she could only ask the kind of question she asked, when there was so much more to ask on the trajectory that this very important and consequential relationship is taking. But, you know, that is the nature of the beast, which is the Western media, especially the so-called liberal media in the West, which without data, without facts, without knowledge, will, you know, do virtue signaling. And I'll give you just one example. When the CAA was passed, there were about 15 or 16 Western journalists who had come to the ORF. And the first thing they started throwing at us was CAA and how Muslims are being deprived of their citizenship. You know, Navika, when we asked them how many of those 16 had read the CAA, not one had read. Not one. They didn't even know how big the law was. They were shocked because we knew this would happen. So we started handing out photocopies of the CAA and they were shocked that it was basically 2 paragraphs. Actually 1. Right? But they had not even bothered to read it. And yet they were writing editorials, they were writing...
Well, but that's the point.
That's a point. In fact, you know, I want to bring in another point. And Anand Ranganathan, the question that I wanted to ask you is this, that of course, in a democracy, everyone's free to ask questions. But the larger question is, can domestic issues and should domestic issues like this, you know, actually cast their shadow at an event which is about 2 countries? And whatever be the domestic compulsions or democratic setup, should that actually be casting its shadow over relations between countries?
That's a very interesting take. But before that, can I please gently counsel my very good friend Kamruji to not interrupt Sushant? It is past midnight. He's a Punjabi and he loves his drink. So please. I'm warning you.
Well, we can't
Last
talk
ti-
about drinks on national
I want
television.
tea,
And if there are any notices, please, they should be directed straight to Dr. Anand Ranganathan.
Last time.
Or filter coffee.
No, but filter coffee, yes. But what I want to say, in fact, Sushant said exactly what I wanted to say. Just to add that, let us say, a thought experiment, and this, I address it to the good Mr. Jain as well. If in the last 8 years, I were to today narrate all those lynchings and murders of every Hindu at the hands of a Muslim, and there are 190 documented attacks of hate crime against Hindus, Dalits and non-Dalits by Muslim mobs. If I were to only talk about that, not talk about what the Hindu, Dalit and non-Dalit mobs have been doing to Muslims, what is the impression I would give? The impression would be that it is a country where Hindus are being used as cannon fodder and they are rampantly under attack by the Muslim mobs. Isn't that right? So what you are doing is exactly the opposite. You are selectively only quoting not just the attacks against the Muslims, but you're also quoting only the mainstreaming of violence by the BJP politicians. So for some, everything bad or violent is mainstreamed always by the BJP, never by the BSP. When it selects as a candidate a man who offered 51 crores to anyone who beheaded Charlie Hebdo journalists, or when Mehbooba Mufti selects a rape accused as a candidate, or when the ex-vice president presents an award to the PFI chief, or when a Congress MLA says he won't work for Dalits as they didn't vote for him, or when Congress Harish Rawat says those who kill a cow have no right to live in India, or when an SP legislator slaps a woman entering Haji Ali, or when Congress legislators demand hanging of Kamlesh Tiwari, or when Yasin Malik is severed by Manmohan Singh, or when Congress leader Nilai Kannan laments why Modi and Shah have not been killed yet, or when CM Stalin felicitates a man convicted in Rajiv Gandhi assassination, or when tens of thousands collect for funerals of terrorists. So that is not mainstreaming for you. This is the problem. You bring out only facts that are selective, and you're giving a wrong picture, Mr. Jain. Don't do that. Love your
And
country.
Mr. Jain, let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question, Mr. Jain. The question also being asked by the Western media is about China. Has the relationship between United States and China been undermined because, Xi Jinping was called a dictator? Well, an authoritarian head of a government has been called a dictator. The Western media has a problem with that. But every single day they will raise questions about India as a democracy. I want to ask you, are you playing into the hands of a narrative that the Western world, the powerful world, the world of elites, where they're trying their best to keep India out of it? Are you playing into their narrative, Mr. Nikhil Jain?
Absolutely not, Navika. See, the Congress party and anybody who's opposing Narendra Modi often compare India and China. They are often making the point that we don't want India to be like China is so far as political rights are concerned. Xi Jinping is a dictator, and nobody is denying that. And I doubt any credible Western media, be it the New York Times, be it CNN, or be it NBC, any of them are questioning the fact that Xi Jinping is a dictator. So far as US-China relations are concerned, let me remind your viewers that the trade between the two countries, annual trade, is $700 billion. The India-US trade is $100 billion. Xi Jinping will be visiting the US soon, if I've read the reports correctly. So it's not that the US is distancing itself from China, or we can have the US distance from China. The simple thing is that the US wants a counterbalance to China in the region. India is a very good strategic player for that. And whoever is the Prime Minister, whether it's Narendra Modi, whether it was Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, US has always been trying to create a strategic relationship with India, and that is something we should all realize and acknowledge, and not pin the entire credit of it on the chest of one man. It's been the work of multiple Prime Ministers, all the way from a Nehru to an Indira Gandhi.
Tushar Gupta, is Mr. Nikhil Jain now running around in circles? Nobody on this panel at least has said, that this is the entire relationship worked out by one man, Narendra Modi. It's just that it's been taken to a whole new level. How come he's not understanding the level that it has reached today?
Doing right now. That's what
imagine it's 12:15 the night Navika and Mr. Jain wants to make a case for Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was the former Prime Minister. I mean, it's laughable. But since we're talking about the US, Navika, excuse me, the statement came from Obama about the whole human rights violation. It's ironic that it's coming from America. I mean, if I were the Prime Minister responding to a WSJ journalist, I would simply ask them about Black Lives Matter. I would ask them about the gun violence. I would ask them about how the Americans have left Afghans to die before the Taliban. I would ask them about the minority right abuses that happened in America after 9/11. I mean, there are so many questions to ask. You know, Barack Obama, as a former president, he may be pulling the strings of the Democrat Party or wherever. But at the end of the day, he's just another celebrity looking for a Netflix contract and making outlandish statements. His statements
That's
do not
being a little
reflect
uncharitable.
No, it is not, Navika. What role does Barack Obama have in the future of Indo-US relationships? He wants to pull the
Well,
string
he's
of the
been
Democrat
the
Party.
former prime minister, former president of the
Okay, then
United
Navika, let
States
me
for 2
rephrase that.
terms,
Let me
not
rephrase
one.
that.
So people will look at his word. I mean, come on,
People
come
should
on,
also look at
Sushant.
what's happening in
But
America
no,
with
I want to
respect to
bring in
Black Lives
Shahzad with
Matter.
one question, because Shahzad, there are those on social media who are today questioning
Madhav, just
how can the
10
leader of one of the biggest countries, the oldest democracies, talk about an India breaking up? You know, isn't that very thought itself something that is, you know, that reeks of some kind of an agenda?
Well, let me make it very clear. Let me quote both the presidents in the right perspective. Firstly, President Biden, credit to him, when he was in a sense forced to answer this question, he said very categorically that America, China and America, India can't be kept in the same bracket because China is not a democracy and India and America are democracies and their DNA have democracy. That's what President Biden said. By the way, President Biden belongs to the same party as Barack Obama and he was the vice president to Barack Obama. Now quoting Barack Obama in the right way that he has made the statement, to be fair to Barack Obama, and I hold no brief for him, when asked multiple times by Christian Amanpour, when Barack Obama explained about China, he said, presuming if this was the situation with India, and if I was to advise India or I was to give counsel to India, I would say that it is in the best interest that the country holds together and treats its ethnic minorities in a completely fair manner, which the country is anyways doing. So his entire analysis was based on a hypothesis. So I don't think that we should throw anybody under the bus. It is the Congress party's mediocre understanding of simple English, because Obama said something very clearly in his book about Rahul Gandhi, that Rahul Gandhi, eager to impress but has very little aptitude. I think when it is a party with little aptitude, they can't perhaps figure out basic grammar and English. That's what Obama has said. That's what Joe Biden has said. I don't think, except for Kamruzaman Chaudhary and Nikhil Jain feeling excited about a non-statement, there's anything else to read into this.
And Obama also wrote in his book about the fact that Dr. Manmohan Singh had no popular base, but was made the prime minister because Sonia Gandhi wanted, her 40-year-old son to someday come to that position.
What he
But
said
may
about
I,
Rahul Gandhi.
may I just, quote one of our viewers watching us, possibly in Las Vegas, Dr. Shabnam Darbari, Indo-American sitting in Las Vegas watching our broadcast tonight, says, "Hi Navika, nice to see you so late at night. Great to see Modi here, very excited. Anand Ranganathan is so good to hear." So Anand Ranganathan, you have a fan club.
Thank you.
Shabnam
Navika,
Darbari.
can I make her hear me again, please? Navika,
Yes.
with your, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. You know, I love this post-midnight debates that you hold. मुझे आप बहुत chance देती हैं. Thank you very much. 9 बजे इतना chance नहीं मिलता. No, but Navika, I just want to say one thing. See,
It's just my
Shehzad,
reflexes are a little slow at this time of the day.
you and Sushant, Punjabis forever. No, but Navika, I agree with the thesis of what Shehzad has said. But let me also say this, मुझे इसकी चिंता नहीं है कि और लोगों ने क्या किया या और लोग गलत है कि नहीं है. मुझे ये चीज सताती रहती है कि हम लोगों ने कुछ एक्शन क्यों नहीं लिया. अगर हम 2015 में ओबामा को रोकते कि भाई ये तुम जो भी बोल रहे हो, क्रिश्चियंस अंडर अटैक और ये सब चीजें, ये बकवास है, ऑल दैट इज फेक नैरेटिव, तो आज ये सिचुएशन देखने को नहीं मिलती. बट वी नेवर रिबटेड हिम इन 2015. Till that, 7 years have gone, we have never ever rebutted him.
But
He has
does
never
it
apologized.
really work like that, Sushant Sareen? Do you actually, go there and macho man, superman, you stand there and say, tumne galat bola? I mean, we do that in domestic politics at the diplomatic stage. Do we do that?
No, I think there is something to be said in what Anand is saying, because I think, the strategy of Mr. Modi has been, and a lot of people pick holes in Mr. Modi's communication strategy by saying, why doesn't he talk about certain things that everybody else in the country is talking about? I think the way from where he's coming from, at least that's my analysis, not my knowledge, but that's the only thing which makes sense to me. I think his point of view is that, look, people are going to talk trash no matter what I do, right? I might as well do them wrong by doing the right things by the people rather than, trying to always explain myself. My explanation will be in my work. So, for example, like Anand and I are pointing out, that if you're talking about discrimination, then please give specific instances on how people have been discriminated against, right? But unfortunately, what happens is, and that is where the communication strategy is missing, when you don't talk about it and you expect people to understand it, by seeing it operate on ground, I think you miss out on really conveying the message in the way it should be done. And I personally believe that has been a problem in terms of both domestically as well as internationally. So domestically, for example, some people try to point out, if I'm not mistaken, and if I am, somebody could speak, but I think Mr. Varis Pathan, and this was a debate between Anand and Varis Pathan, where Varis Pathan started pointing out that, Muslims have been discriminated against and that under some housing scheme, they had not been given enough houses. And then Anand came out with data and, proved him wrong. Now, the problem is that very often, people will come out and throw false facts, fake news, and try and carry the debate through. And then that becomes the narrative. And just to correct it becomes a big problem.
That's right, and let me just refer to those visuals on your screen, ladies and gentlemen. That's a queue waiting to go into the US Congress to listen to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who's likely to be there in the next 15 to 20 minutes, and we're in the countdown for that. The question now is, what is he going to say in his address to the joint session of the Congress in Capitol Hill? A lot of anticipation building up there, and I want to get in Kamru Zaman Chaudhry. Kamru Zaman Chaudhry, when Shehzad Poonawalla says that it was a hypothetical question that was posed to Barack Obama, and suddenly the Congress party has latched on to it almost as if it was a life jacket being thrown your way. Would you read and listen to that interview all over again and respond if it was that big a statement, taking away or, questioning how India's minorities are treated?
No, let me cite you a few examples, Basically, how the India-US relation at present I perceive and see is that apart from the geopolitics and the business relations that we are steadily growing over the last few years, that means, let me say, from the liberalization of Indian economy during the UPA regime to Manmohan Singh's nuclear deal with the USA. That was the most important deal that we have done in independent India, getting in nuclear fuel from United States of America. Apart from that, there are very serious issues on a serious note that needs to be addressed. Like, you cannot have your geopolitical and the business interest overshadow the human rights abuses, the religious intolerance, the press freedom. Then there are a lot of issues of targeting of the civil society groups, institutions being compromised. There are where political isolation of a particular section, let me say the Muslims itself, by the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party. You can see the Manipur situation right now. More than 100 churches have been destroyed. More than 100 people have been killed. But there is not even a single proactive action from the union government, apart from a few this and that by the union home minister. These are the issues that the world is watching. The world is looking forward to the world's largest democracy in the world.
Does he want America to intervene in Manipur? Are you suggesting internationalization like Chacha Nehru internationalized Kashmir?
Baba,
You want
Baba,
Manipur to be
Baba,
internationalized?
Baba,
You know, this sounds like being a traitor. I'm sorry, I don't use this language, but you are an absolute traitor if you want to internationalize Manipur at the altar of Times Now's debate by asking for some other foreign power to intervene into Manipur.
Why are you so
I am sorry,
triggered?
the Northeast has seen blockades, blasts and bans for decades under the Congress. We never went to a foreign power asking them to intervene. If that is what you're suggesting, internationalization
Are you
of Kashmir
suggesting
and
that, Kamruzaman
internationalization of
Chaudhary,
Manipur, I
are
think
you
it's nothing
suggesting
less than being a traitor.
are you suggesting internationalization of the Manipur issue? Are you
I
suggesting?
doubt whether Saijat Poonawalla is, I don't know, I don't have words to describe what he's just said. The
You
basic
just
point is
said
that,
America
no,
should
wait,
intervene into the
wait,
issue
wait,
of
wait,
Manipur.
Shahzad Bhai,
Manipur has
Shahzad
been
Bhai,
blockades for three years. It
Shahzad
happened under the
Bhai-
Congress regime, 2011. Please go back. We never asked for some foreign power to intervene into Manipur. Nor did we ask a foreign power to intervene into Kashmir.
I'll call for a ceasefire. I'll call for a ceasefire because I'm being joined by Walter Anderson, author and historian, joining me live from the United States. Walter Anderson, there is a lot of talk that's going on back home in India about the question that was posed by the Wall Street Journal journalist to Prime Minister Narendra Modi about democracy and the treatment of minorities in India and his response to it. How do you respond to the kind of narrative that is being tried to be built about India and Prime Minister Modi?
Well, it is a narrative, and I can tell you this, it is a minority narrative, and certainly in the government circles, it's a minority narrative, as this whole trip indicated. I heard the response and I heard the answer when at the earlier meeting at the end of the joint press conference that they had, when each was kind of asked that about India. Maybe Modi should have been asked that about the U.S. as well. But the question was about India, and it was very smart. They said the key element in any, whether we have, protection of civil rights and that sort of thing is the vibrancy of our democracy. And we have a very vibrant democracy where you have, in fact, parties can lose elections. Look at the election in Karnataka. Where the BJP lost the election to an opposition party. So the key is whether or not you have a democracy, and India does. And then in the answer to the two questions, both of them said our two constitutions start with the same three words: we the people. And we the people means we the people, the Democrats. And where the U.S. and India have much in common is they're incredibly diverse societies. In India, even more so than the U.S. in many ways. It's a country that has, 28 official languages and an enormous social variety as well. And yet it works together. And what holds it together, in my view, is not ethnicity. It's not religion. It's the fact they have a common democratic process is what holds it together. And it's the same for the U.S. as well.
What would you make of President Obama's statement in an interview given to CNN? The timing of it and the manner in which virtually some people say he was pushed to make that statement.
Could you repeat the statement for me? I know he's made a lot of statements, but which one are you referring to?
The recent statement that he made on CNN to Christine Amonpour, where he was asked, and he said that if he were to suggest to Prime Minister Modi, if he had a hypothetical conversation with him, he would say that minorities should be looked after, otherwise India would come apart.
Well, that's not a diplomatic answer, nor is it an accurate answer. And I'm not surprised. I mean, he's asked the question by a person who does not have a record of being particularly friendly towards India. And so it kind of fits into that scheme as well. You have a very different situation today in India, where you have the president of the United States, who was the vice president of Obama, saying that, the future of the relationship is something, that we can be proud of and look forward to, as common democracies and as countries that have a common strategic interest in that part of the world. I'm thinking people should read the last issue of The Economist, where it has as its thing at the top is that India is our new best friend. Now, this from The Economist, for those people in the audience who read The Economist, it tends to take a snarky approach to India. But this one did not. This was actually very, optimistic that in India, which is growing rapidly, which has the world's largest population, which in terms of geostrategic interests is sort of the major country in the Indian Ocean littoral, this is a country that the U.S. needs a good relationship with. If we're going to have, any kind of presence in that part of the world, it has to be with India. And India is a democracy. And anyone who says it is not has another agenda at stake, and not one that's an accurate one. And I think the two prime ministers in answering that question said that, look at how our two constitutions start. We the people, because what does that mean? That means the people govern the country, and they govern it through regular elections. So, I think we can stop there, and I think that the prime minister put that issue to rest. I mean, there'll always be some people who hate India, and there'll always be people who have negative naysayers. But on this, they are inaccurate.
Well, so let me ask you, Walter Anderson, how much is former President Obama in sync with India and the way India is perceived in the world and with the people of America?
No, he's not, and certainly not with his vice president. He's not in sync with that. I have a feeling if he was asked the question by someone else in a different kind of setting and environment, his answer probably would be quite different from what you just said. I wouldn't give much concern for that, because I don't think it has much, if any, role to play in the relationship with the U.S. and India. And I think what you have seen today, and we'll see again tomorrow, will be the outpouring of strong effort on both sides to build a strong relationship. In fact, in many ways, this was an ideal time for Prime Minister Modi to visit the U.S. And why do I say that? Because a lot of things are going in India's direction. It has a large and robust economy, the fastest growing economy at 67% a year of any of the world's major countries. In effect, the Chinese, in a sense, have encouraged a geostrategic relationship by being aggressive, not only toward India, but in the larger Indian Ocean area as well. And then you have a large community of Indian Americans, 4.5 million. The wealthiest community in the United States, the best educated community, one that's taken a more active role in a whole variety of things, including investing in India, as came out in the meetings today. And so, you have a kind of convergence of those interests, making for, what has turned out to be so far and will continue to be, a meeting with, a lot of fanfare. I saw the meeting this morning at the White House. I have never seen a meeting quite as, what should I say, filled with pomp and circumstance as this was. And there's a reason, because the relationship is important to the U.S. It's important to India as well.
And what is your expectation of Prime Minister Modi's address to the joint session of the Congress?
It should be going on right now, right as we speak in the U.S. right now. In fact, I had to break away to get into this.
Well, it's still to begin in about 10 to 15 minutes from now. What would you expect him to say?
What he said in his statement at the joint press conference. I mean, these events, and I know from my days in the State Department, these events are always, what should I say? You're never going to say, tell major, huge things that have an impact on these events. And so, we want a good relationship. We respect each other as fellow democracies, that sort of, at a very generalized level. Though they did say a few things this morning, which I suspect he did as well. They made a couple of announcements of things that they would be doing. One would be a space cooperation And in 2024, an Indian astronaut will go to the International Space Station, and India will launch its own space, and that will be from an Indian-launched space rocket as well. So that's one. The other one was the Critical and Emerging Technologies Agreement. And I think that's showing in a couple of things that have already appeared as agreements. One is on the drones, very high state-of-the-art drones, $3 billion deal. That's been announced, as well as the technology agreement, which, as I say, involves this, but it also involves the space issue as well. There's something else that was interesting that came up, and that is having a roadway for education students. And later it was kind of hinted that the H-1B visa, which tends to be for people who have technical training, they're going to remove some problems that have held that up. And India is by far the biggest recipient of the H-1B visas. So what you can expect is that more Indians will stay longer on their H-1Bs, more will receive it and stay longer to get training here. And that establishes links between the two countries. Because that was another issue that came up, how India private enterprise and American private enterprise can have links to each other rather than government to government, which can be somewhat stale. In this case, private enterprise is much more innovative and creative, and both sides pledge themselves to do that. And it's already beginning to happen now. You're already, 1/4 of the iPhones in the next few years will be made in India, and that percentage is only going to go up. You're having more, what do they call it, the discs that they do in IT, the word escapes me now, but there's a shortage of these discs.
Semiconductors.
What's that?
Semiconductors.
Yes. So more of those are going to be, in fact, a new factory is going to come up in India to manufacture them. And so you're having, and then you're having a lot of the wealthier Indian, and there are many, the Indian American community is the wealthiest community in the United States and best educated.
I want your last word, Walter Anderson, on whether or not you think India is a vibrant democracy.
Do I? Yes. And my wife is an Indian. She has a business there. I go there every year. I see it. I follow Indian. It's not that there aren't problems. We have problems. Norway has problems. Denmark has problems. India has its problems, but it's addressing them. You can read about them. Unlike places like, our president called Xi Jinping a dictator, which he is, but you would never read that in the Chinese press. It just wouldn't appear. Whereas in the Indian press, all sorts of things appear, as you well know. And on TV, all sorts of things are heard on TV. Are you going to go to jail tonight for saying something? No, you're not. And even if you did, there'd be an uproar in India about that. So there's a huge difference.
Well said, Walter Anderson. Thank you very much for joining us right here in a midnight broadcast that we're doing in India. But of course, we're waiting for that historic address that the Prime Minister will make in a few moments to the joint session of the Congress. Thank you, Walter Anderson. And going back to the debate
just one line, Madhav, just one line.
To updates before, because there's a lot of activity that's going on.
Before we get into the political debate, Kevin McCarthy has just tweeted he's welcomed Prime Minister Modi. The visuals of that welcome as well. He says it's a privilege to welcome the leader of the world's largest democracy to address the Congress of the world's oldest democracy. Tune in at 4 p.m. ET for Narendra Modi's joint address at the US Capitol. So the Prime Minister has reached the Capitol Hill. We saw that long line outside the Congress chamber, which incidentally where people were lining up, and in just about 14 minutes from now is when we expect that joint address to begin.
Those visuals on our screen now, people coming into the Congress and actually getting ready to listen to the Prime Minister's address. But back home, of course, it's absolutely right time to do a lot of politics. And Supriya Srinath has just tweeted 140 करोड़ भारतीयों के प्रधानमंत्री का जवाब इतना कमजोर. अगर गांधी के सत्याग्रह और अपने राजधर्म को निभाया होता तो आज वैश्विक पटल पर हिंदुस्तान के प्रधानमंत्री की दहाड़ सुनाई देती। वो सीना ठोक कर और हुंकार भर के अपने देश के अल्पसंख्यक समुदाय की रक्षा पर जवाब देता। Not even dete.
Navika, just let me weigh in on this. First of all, we let our work do the talking, not our sound and decibel levels. And Supriya is known for her decibel levels, not for her intellectual or her work level.
Prime Minister Modi meeting, Kevin McCarthy there, the Speaker of the US Congress, and that meeting, clearly the Prime Minister is inside there, Capitol Hill, waiting for that big address. I hope our reporters can make their way inside, but yes, countdown begins and
it's a hectic day for them. It's a hectic day for them, Navika. Just one second before you come in. It's been very, very difficult. First is the whole, the security check and getting into White House itself, which itself you must understand is a security nightmare. We know what it's like to enter Rashtrapati Bhavan or 7LKM over here. So we can just understand the security protocol and dealing with reporters from both countries. After that, dashing all the way across the city to the US Capitol, which has similar protocols in place, getting the special pass made to enter the chamber. All of that is very difficult. And then they'll have to run all the way back to the White House later this evening for that state dinner.
Well, US Congressman Buddy Carter joining the broadcast. And Mr. Carter, I want to ask you, what is your expectation of this historic moment when Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to be addressing the Congress? Any expectations that you and your colleagues might have? Mr. Carter, if you could hear me.
Yes, I can.
Yes, go on. What are your
well,
expectations?
thank you. And listen, this is a very momentous day here in America and in India because we have the largest democracy in the world, the oldest democracy in the world. And I really appreciate Prime Minister Modi being here and accepting Speaker McCarthy's invitation to address a joint session of Congress. You know, we need to build our relation with our allies, particularly with an emerging economic power like India, so that we can bring peace and prosperity to the region and to the world. This is a very important relationship, and today's visit builds on that relationship.
Many people are talking about the naysayers in the Congress, some of them boycotting this event. Do you think that's serious?
You know, I haven't personally heard a lot of people indicate that they were going to boycott. You know, we're very busy up here and people get pulled in different directions. I, for one, have a very strong and very large Indian community in my district, and I certainly wanted to be here. And I think that's true of just about all members of Congress. We recognize the importance of India and the importance of building a relationship with, again, an emerging economic power like India and building relationships with our allies. They're extremely important.
There are naysayers who say that Indian democracy is under pressure. How would you rate Indian democracy?
No, you know, look, I believe that India has a strong democracy, and I think that democracy in the world is something we need more of. Certainly, India is the largest democracy in the world, so we need to, like all governments, I'm sure there are things that we need to work on, but nevertheless, it's, you know, it's a very important relationship for us here in America.
Do you think at this moment, the moment in which we're sitting in this century, do you think India's relationship with the United States has been work in progress? Today, do you see this going up several notches with this engagement in Washington today?
I do. I do think this helps. This is one of the few visits that we've ever had from a prime minister from India, a state visit, and one of the few visits, one of the few state visits that this administration, this current administration, has had with any world leader. So that speaks volumes, and I wouldn't discount that at all. I think I would read a lot into that.
Do you think there is bipartisan support in the United States about engagement with India, and how do Americans see India today Do they see it as a developing country, or do they see it as a superpower, emerging superpower in this part of the world?
I would say it is emerging. Now, look, I'm not going to mislead you. I understand that there are naysayers out there, and certainly members of Congress who are naysayers, but the majority, I believe, values our relationship with India and understands how important it is.
Well, I'd have to thank you, because we're going over to the Congress where Vice President Kamala Harris is addressing the U.S. Congress. Let's listen in. Everybody is making their way into the house there and getting ready for that address, likely to begin just in a few moments. Shehzad, you were making a point.
The couple of points that on a day when the American president makes the most categorical statement against a Chinese president, calling him out for being a dictator, you have a bunch of people trying to put India in the same bracket as China. This shows that how some people owe their allegiance, either tied up by a MOU or otherwise, to China. The fact of the matter is that never has such a categorical statement been made. And the maximum extent to which Barack Obama went in the pursuance of Christian Amanpour's question was that there is an illiberal democracy. Well, I could have that view about American democracy when you don't have abortion rights for women, or women don't have autonomy over their own body. So what is an illiberal democracy? Either you're a democracy or you're not. The fact of the matter is that the President of the United States called the Chinese president a dictator, and here you instantly have a bunch of people, unfortunately from your own country, rallying up to a question by Sabrina Siddiqui, I believe the name of the journalist from Wall Street Journal, who now wants to equate India with China despite winning in the Karnataka election. So this entirely shows that how some people's part of the toolkit is only to ensure that Chinese agenda or Chinese propaganda can continue to be peddled. That's the only reason I can draw
but I
conclusion out
thought
of.
President Biden gave a befitting reply, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, didn't he, when he actually put India-US relations above US-China relations. He minced no words.
Absolutely.
No, absolutely. But, it also could be the case that he simply forgot that he had to preach like other previous United States presidents before him to patronize and preach us about religious freedoms and human rights. He simply forgot, as is his habit. No, but on a serious note, I think the time has come for all the naysayers, persistent naysayers, to be asked a very simple question. Forget about US, whether it believes in all their propaganda. I asked the panelist out here, two panelists who are good friends, Mr. Jain first, does he believe that Christians were under communal attack in 2014, as Obama said? It's a simple yes or no question, Mr. Jain.
First of all, you never asked me that. Secondly, I don't think they were under attack by the state.
Thank you.
Per se.
There we go. There we go. Thank
by
you.
the state is the question. And again,
No,
when we are talking about
even by people,
when we're talking about,
Navika, those were
when
fake
we're talking
attacks.
about
Please,
President
Mr.
Biden,
Jain.
let's not forget.
No, what are you saying? By the state
Democratic
is
Party,
different
and he's
from
somebody who
by the
contested this
BJP.
election
I mean,
primarily using the name of Obama. The same way BJP chief ministers today contest their elections under the name
Jain
of
has
Modi,
been caught out
Biden contested
live
his
on
election
television.
under the name of Obama. It's a very
Really?
clever play by the Democratic Party that one of their tallest leaders is making a statement against Prime Minister
Navika.
Modi, and the other tallest leader, the one who happens to be in office in the government, is making a statement in favor of Narendra
Nikhil
Modi.
Jain,
And that's all
if
realize the kind
you
of
were in our
diplomatic
studios, I
policy.
would have given you a strong cup of coffee, because you're contradicting yourself. You're tying yourself
Not
up
all,
in
not at
knots.
all. Let's realize the diplomatic play the
Navika,
diplomatic
for
play
8
that's going
years,
on
they
here
were talking about
with President Biden and how the
attack,
American
and just
administration
now
is
on
acting
live
right now.
television,
Dr.
American
Anand Ranganathan
does
wants
not
to
have
have
friends
you.
or enemies, it only
Dr.
has
Anand
interests, and
Ranganathan wants to have you for midnight snack, but we are cutting across to the US Congress, where Speaker Kevin McCarthy is addressing.